was supposed to be in the room with me in right here or in Tulsa, but he's down there saving children.
A regular natural form, which is caused by torturing little kids.
According to multiple industry insiders, Jim Caviezels stood on a film set, cameras off, crew chatting casually, and the moment someone whispered the words Epstein Island, every single person in that room went dead silent. The panic in their eyes told him everything he needed to know about who was protecting whom in Hollywood. This is not some fringe rumor from the dark corners of the internet. This is one of the most respected actors in modern cinema, a man who starred in the highest-grossing independent film of all time, deliberately torching his entire career to say things that the entertainment industry has spent years trying to bury. He didn't lose his mind, he didn't fall off, he didn't spiral into irrelevance. He chose to walk directly into the fire while he was still at the very top. And what he's been saying for years about the gatekeepers of Hollywood is now being confirmed in ways that should terrify every single person who dismissed him. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the machinery of silence is finally starting to crack. Let's go back to the beginning. After the Passion of the Christ became a global phenomenon, Jim Caviezel had everything. The prestige, the money, the career trajectory that most actors would sell their souls for. He could have played it safe, collected studio checks for the next 30 years, and retired quietly in Malibu. Instead, he took on a project called Sound of Freedom, a film based on the true story of a government agent rescuing children from trafficking networks in Colombia. And when he brought that project to the major studios, expecting at least a conversation, he got doors slammed in his face. Not one door, not two. Every major studio and network reportedly refused to touch the film. Actors and producers were warned directly that if they associated with the project, their careers would be permanently destroyed. As multiple sources close to the production have documented extensively, the resistance wasn't just passive disinterest, it was coordinated. The media launched a smear campaign labeling the film a QAnon production, a conspiracy vehicle, a piece of dangerous propaganda, and yet the film was based on documented, verified events. The same media outlets that had previously celebrated the real-life hero Tim Ballard suddenly wanted nothing to do with his story the moment it was put on screen. The question being asked by millions of people is devastatingly simple. Why would a movie about saving children be considered radioactive by the most powerful people in entertainment? Jim Caviezel has answered that question publicly and repeatedly. He claims the film hits too close to home for the people who actually run the show. And the evidence he points to is forensic in its precision. During filming in Colombia, the crew didn't just follow a script. They witnessed actual crimes happening in broad daylight, children being sold like merchandise on the street while local authorities looked the other way. Jim brought that reality back to Hollywood, expecting a wave of support. What he found instead was a wall of silence so thick it might as well have been concrete. But it doesn't stop there, because Jim didn't just call out faceless corporations. He named specific gatekeepers. He spoke publicly about reaching out to Ellen DeGeneres, pleading with her to use her massive platform to shine a light on what was happening. Ellen, the queen of kindness, the woman who ended every show telling millions of viewers to be kind to one another. According to Jim, the response was deafening silence. She never spoke, she never acted. And then years later, the mask slipped. When multiple staffers and guests came forward describing a culture of fear, surveillance, and cruelty behind the scenes of her show, Ellen's empire collapsed almost overnight. Nikki Tutorials publicly stated the show literally restricted which bathrooms guests could use. Staff described constant monitoring. The persona Ellen projected for 30 minutes a day was, by all documented accounts, a carefully constructed mask. And the question that nobody in mainstream media wants to touch is this. What did she know about Epstein Island, and why did her name reportedly appear in visitor logs? Let that sink in. And here's what most people don't know. Ellen wasn't the only gatekeeper Jim identified. Oprah Winfrey's name appeared over 5 times in the unsealed Epstein documents. 5 times. The woman who has been the ultimate arbiter of truth in Western culture for 3 decades. The woman whose endorsement could make or break a career, a book, a product, an entire movement. Her connections to controversial figures are documented and impossible to ignore. She was a vocal supporter and close friend of John of God, the Brazilian spiritual healer who was later sentenced to nearly 400 years in prison for horrific crimes against hundreds of women. She was photographed for years, standing alongside Harvey Weinstein, smiling at events, at dinners, at industry functions. The same Harvey Weinstein whose exposure triggered the entire movement that reshaped Hollywood. Jim uses the word gatekeeper deliberately. These figures provide a safe, warm, trustworthy face for an industry that hides something monstrous underneath. They use their credibility as a shield, not for the vulnerable, but for the system that exploits them. Over 300,000 children are being trafficked within the United States every single year. That's not a statistic on a policy brief. That's a stadium full of vanished lives. Approximately 85,000 children who cross the southern border have disappeared without a trace into a system that was supposedly designed to protect them. And this is the topic that gets you banned, blacklisted, and buried. When you put all of this together, a pattern starts to emerge that is impossible to dismiss as coincidence. An actor at the height of his career warns about powerful networks exploiting children. The industry locks him out. The media calls him insane. The gatekeepers he names are later exposed for precisely the kind of behavior he described. The documents he referenced are unsealed and contain exactly the names he pointed to. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a documented sequence of events with named individuals, public records, and a trail of consequences that leads in one very specific direction. Which brings us to the most disturbing chapter of this entire saga. In August 2022, actress Anne Heche died in a fiery car crash in Los Angeles. The official ruling was accidental, but unconfirmed reports suggest Anne had been working on a documentary project titled Children of the Machine, an expose reportedly targeting the very networks Jim Caviezels has been warning about for years. Anne had spent years trying to articulate disturbing experiences from her time in Hollywood. Experiences she described as too dark to speak aloud. Sources close to the actress, unnamed and unverified, have whispered that she knew too much and was preparing to go public. Her death came at the exact moment. Epstein revelations were gaining global momentum and whistleblowers were starting to emerge. That doesn't automatically mean anything suspicious, but the timing has never been adequately explained. For millions of people, her name lingers like a question no one in power wants to answer. Compare this to how Jeffrey Epstein himself ended in federal custody. The cameras malfunctioned at the precise moment he supposedly died. Both guards assigned to his high-profile watch fell asleep simultaneously. The surveillance footage was conveniently unavailable. The man who held the keys to the most explosive scandal in modern history was permanently silenced before he could name a single name in court. Think about that for a second. If that sequence of events appeared in a movie script, it would be rejected as too unbelievable. But here's where things get really interesting. The walls Jim Caviezels predicted would fall are falling right now. The recent investigations into industry moguls like Diddy have exposed exactly the kind of networked protection system Jim described years ago. Public trust in mainstream media has collapsed to historic lows. The names that were once untouchable are being questioned openly for the first time. The people who thought they were safe behind redacted documents and gatekeeper friendships are watching the light reach corners they thought would stay dark forever. The system that allowed Epstein and his associates to operate for decades was built entirely on a foundation of silence, and that silence is shattering in real time. Whistleblowers continue to come forward at great personal cost, knowing what happened to others who spoke before them, and choosing to speak anyway because the alternative is worse. We are watching that happen in real time. Jim Caviezels may have been blacklisted from every major studio in Hollywood, but he has not been silenced. He continues to speak at conferences, on podcasts, and to anyone willing to listen. He knows that once you've seen the faces of those children, once you've witnessed the reality of those networks, you can never go back to the comfort of the lie. The machinery of protection is powerful, but it is also extraordinarily fragile. It relies on every single person playing their part and keeping their mouth shut. All it takes is one person to break rank, then another, and then the whole thing comes down. The reckoning Jim Caviezel warned about isn't some distant prophecy. It is a choice every single one of us makes when we decide to stop listening to the gatekeepers and start looking at the documented evidence for ourselves. The names are there, the connections are documented, and the silence is breaking faster than anyone at the top ever thought possible.